I'm Rachel, and I want to take you back to a bright Sunday that didn't start out any different, but ended up being the day that completely altered my life. It was one of those days that you hope will go unnoticed, but it lingers with you forever. A range of emotions swept over me as soon as I drew up to my brother James's house. Although I was anxious to see everyone, I was also a little excited. I was excited to catch up with my family because it had been a while since we had all been together. I also had some great news to share. After much effort, I had recently been hired as a manager at a prestigious marketing company. I had a ton of packages of chips and homemade salsa in my 1998 black vehicle. It was undoubtedly ugly in comparison to the other automobiles in the driveway, but at least it was mine and I had paid for it. What mattered was that it got me where I needed to go. James was there to welcome me with a smile as soon as I got out of the vehicle. "Hi, Jules." He joked, "We were beginning to think you bailed on us." As I passed the treats over, I giggled. Never. Despite the terrible traffic, I made it. As soon as we entered the backyard, I could smell hamburgers cooking on the grill. James's wife, Mary, was standing on the terrace when I noticed her. It seemed as though she had just walked out of a fashion magazine. She was wearing an enormous pair of expensive sunglasses and the ideal summer outfit. She was usually able to draw attention, and today was no exception. My siblings, Michael and Amy, were busy putting up some outside activities, while my parents were at the grill waving as they turned the burgers. Everything appeared ideal, as was typical of family get-togethers. Naturally, Mary had to make her appearance. "The honored guest has finally arrived." Mary yelled out in a voice so loud that she made sure everyone could hear her, including the neighbors. Her gaze flickered to my blue vintage automobile that was parked next to their brand-new, gleaming SUV as she was saying this. "Jules, couldn't you just park that antique around the block? It ruins my perspective." My cousins laughed a little, and I attempted to laugh it off. I tried not to let that get to me, but I said, "Well, it gets me from point A to point B." Mary, though, wasn't done. She let out a loud sigh and took a drink of her beverage. "You really ought to treat yourself to something finer, honey. You two realize that you're a manager now. You ought to behave accordingly." I opened my mouth to reply, eager to tell her how happy I was about the new job, but Mary had already turned away. She was totally ignoring me and assembling a bunch of people for a game. I stood there for a while, the hurt of her words still fresh. The way she said it served as a reminder that, in her opinion, no matter what I accomplished, I would never be enough. It wasn't just about the automobile. I looked across the yard at James, who gave me a pitying shrug and mouthed, "Don't let her get to you." I made an effort to grin back, but it was difficult to get over the sense of denigration. Like other barbecues, the day consisted of games, socializing, and family catch-up. I made an effort to have fun, but Mary's remark was all I could think about. She had made me feel insignificant before, and I knew it wouldn't be the last. It was more about the unsaid rivalry we appeared to have all the time, which served as a constant reminder of my place in her world, than it was about the automobile. The discourse was easy to follow as we all sat down to dine. Everyone was exchanging life updates, including news about their families and new employment. During my turn, I broke the exciting news about my recent employment. The family thanked me, and I received a few inquiries about the work. But just when I thought I had the limelight, Mary stole it by highlighting her own function at a comparable firm and making it appear as though my accomplishment was little in comparison to hers. She had no idea that I was going to do something much more significant, something that would completely alter her life. However, I wasn't going to wait for her to sabotage the moment. Mary grinned as she leaned over to say, "So, Rachel, this new job must be a big step up from your old one, huh?" as we were all seated around the table enjoying the dinner. "Hopefully they're paying you enough to upgrade that car soon," she said, chuckling a bit. She gave James a little shove, obviously enjoying her remark. Just as I opened my mouth to reply, my mother interrupted. "Everyone is so happy for Rachel." She expressed her delight in her job by saying, "She's worked really hard for this," grinning warmly. I was unable to get rid of the tension that was simmering just beneath the surface, even though the rest of the lunch was filled with laughing and family anecdotes. Despite being uttered with a grin, Mary's remark had hurt. I couldn't help but feel irritated by her constant ability to poke fun at me for the whole evening. People started saying their goodbyes as the sun started to drop. While I assisted with cleanup, I continued to consider Mary's conceit and tried to get over my anxiety about beginning my new work on Thursday. As I approached my new office's sleek glass building on Thursday morning, my nerves were shot. Nervous moments accompany new experiences, but this was beyond compare. I wasn't only beginning a new career. I was taking on a supervisory position at one of the city's leading marketing companies. My stomach churned with a mixture of exhilaration and worry as the pressure seemed unbelievably high. The receptionist smiled warmly at me as soon as I walked in. "Good morning, Rachel. You can enter the upstairs now." As I made my way to the elevator, I tried to calm myself by taking a big breath. There was cheers when the elevator doors opened. My new colleagues was there grinning broadly and cheering as they welcomed me. A portion of the anxiety that had been accumulating was released during what seemed like a bizarre moment. Mr. David, the director, came forward and gave me a hard handshake. He declared, "Let's all formally welcome Rachel as your new project manager." The room buzzed with excitement, and I felt a rush of pride. But then my eyes landed on Mary. She was clapping along with everyone else, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Her applause was slow and hesitant, and I could see the shock on her face. It was clear she hadn't known until that moment that I would be her new boss. After the introductions, Mary approached me with a tight, forced smile. "Let's catch up after this, Rachel," she said, trying to sound cheerful, but there was an edge of surprise in her voice. "Sure, let's do that," I replied, keeping my voice calm and composed, though inside my emotions were swirling. I couldn't help but feel a bit of satisfaction seeing Mary in this position after her comments at the barbecue. Once the meeting ended and people returned to their desks, Mary lingered. She walked toward me, her usual confidence clearly shaken. "Rachel, about the barbecue, I hope there are no hard feelings," she said, her voice much softer than usual. It was a far cry from the bold, smug Mary I was used to. I looked at her, keeping my expression professional. "Mary, let's keep our focus on work. Personal matters stay outside these walls," I replied, giving her a polite but distant smile. "Of course, Rachel." "You're right," Mary nodded, though her eyes darted away, unable to fully hide the unease she felt. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my new role. I spent hours reviewing project files and performance reports, trying to get up to speed as quickly as possible. One thing became clear: Mary's work required special attention. There were inconsistencies in her project timelines and budget allocations that didn't quite add up. I knew I had to address it sooner rather than later. During one of our one-on-one meetings, I decided to bring it up directly. "Mary, I've noticed some discrepancies in the Smith account. Can you walk me through your process here?" I asked, keeping my tone calm and professional. Mary hesitated for a moment, clearly caught off guard. "Sure," she replied, but I could see the unease in her eyes. It was going to be an interesting road ahead, managing both the professional challenges and the personal dynamics at play. But I was ready for it. This was my time to prove myself, and I wasn't about to let anything or anyone, including Mary, get in my way. Mary gave a nervous laugh, fidgeting with her pen. I mean, it's probably just some small oversights. You know how it is with tight deadlines, she said, trying to brush off the issue. I looked at her calmly but firmly. Minor or not, accuracy is important, Mary. We can't afford any mistakes, especially with such important clients. Let's go through this together, okay? My tone left little room for excuses, and Mary quickly nodded. Yes, absolutely. I'll pull up the details now, she said, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed on her keyboard. As we went through the files, it became obvious that Mary had been cutting corners. Her work barely met the minimum standard, and the more we reviewed, the more gaps we found. I made sure to take notes on everything, documenting every oversight in detail. I knew this would come up again in future meetings, and I needed to be prepared for it. In our next meeting, I laid out the evidence in front of her. Mary, based on these reviews, it's clear that there are consistent issues with your work. These oversights need to be fixed immediately. Mary's face tightened, but she nodded. I understand, Rachel. I'll make sure to tighten things up. Thanks for pointing these out, she said, her voice a mixture of gratitude and discomfort. I nodded, my tone firm. Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. Our clients and our team are counting on us to be diligent. As Mary left my office, I could see the weight of the situation finally sinking in. For me, it was about making sure our work remained up to standard. But deep down, I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. In a way, it felt like justice was being served, and I knew Mary had a lot to prove going forward. The following Thursday, the stakes were even higher, not just for me, but for Mary too. It was her chance to show what she could really do. She walked into the office, clutching her oversized designer bag and a stack of files. Her heels clicked on the polished floor as she made her way to my office. Got a minute? I called out, motioning her inside. My tone was serious but calm. Sure, she replied, smoothing down her blouse before sitting across from me. I'm putting you in charge of the Henderson project, I said, laying out the project details in front of her. It's not a huge project, but it's an important one. This is your chance to show what you're capable of. Mary's eyes widened slightly, a mix of nervousness and excitement flashing across her face. Really? Thank you, Rachel. I won't let you down. I nodded, watching her closely. I'll be guiding you through it, but I want to see what you can do when you're leading the project. The next few days were intense. I kept a close eye on her progress, checking in regularly. We had frequent meetings, and I made sure to document every decision and approval. At first, Mary was enthusiastic, throwing herself into the project, but as the pressure mounted, her energy started to wane. During one of our strategy sessions, I noticed her struggling. Mary, during our last review, you mentioned outsourcing some of the graphics work. Have you properly vetted the vendor? I asked, trying to get a clear answer. Oh yeah, they're fine, Mary replied quickly, clearly trying to move past the question. It should be okay. I raised an eyebrow, not satisfied with her response. It's important that they're more than just okay. Can you show me the vetting process you used? Mary paused, realizing she hadn't done the proper work. Her confidence faltered, and I could see that the stress was getting to her. This wasn't just about doing the minimum anymore. It was about stepping up and proving that she could handle the responsibility. As the project continued, I pushed her to meet the high standards we needed. It wasn't easy, but I could tell Mary was learning. Mistakes were still made, but each time she corrected them faster. Watching her work under pressure, I realized that while she had a long way to go, she was starting to take the job more seriously. By the end of the project, I could see a change in Mary. She wasn't the same overconfident, carefree person from before. She had been humbled by the experience, and while there was still room for improvement, I knew she was on the right path. I pressed on, knowing that any mistake now would be officially noted. Mary fumbled through her files, her usual confidence slipping away. "I'll get that information to you by the end of the day," she stammered. "I just didn't bring the paperwork with me right now." The days stretched into weeks, and the project deadline loomed closer. In a team meeting, it was finally Mary's turn to present her progress. The room was full, and the air was thick with anticipation. Mary stood at the front, holding her report, but her usual poise was gone. She seemed unsettled, her confidence nowhere in sight. "All right, let's see," she began, flipping through her notes. "For the marketing strategy, we are, planning to..." Her words trailed off, and she stumbled over her sentences. The report lacked the depth and clarity that was expected, and I could sense the tension rising in the room. Mr. David, who was seated in the corner, raised his eyebrows slightly and gave me a nod, signaling his concern. This was the moment I had been waiting for. "Mary," I interjected, "could you clarify how the budget was allocated? There seemed to be some discrepancies between your report and the original estimates." Her face turned red as she shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I had to make some last-minute changes, and the costs, well, they kind of got away from me." "I see," I said, keeping my tone calm but firm. "It's crucial that we stick to the planned budget, especially when dealing with new clients. We need to make sure this doesn't happen again." I glanced around the room and could see the concern on my team members' faces. It was important for everyone to learn from this, not just Mary. As the meeting ended, the team shuffled out, and murmurs about the project status filled the room. Mary lingered behind, her defeat evident. Her usual confidence had crumbled, and I could see the weight of the situation settling on her. "Rachel," she said quietly as she approached me. "I tried to handle it, but I don't know what went wrong." I looked at her, my tone firm but not harsh. "Managing projects is about oversight and adaptability, Mary. We need to discuss how we can fix this." Mary nodded, agreeing to meet with me later to work through the issues. I could tell she was embarrassed, but this was more than just her failure. It was about maintaining a high standard for the entire team. I documented everything carefully, noting the issues in her work. It was clear to everyone now that her mismanagement had caused problems, but I wasn't happy about her struggle. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting the company and our clients. Upholding professional standards was key. The day after that rough meeting, the office was unusually quiet. As I made my way to my desk, I could hear whispers behind me. People were talking about what had happened. Mary was pacing near the water cooler and intercepted me before I could even sit down. "This was a setup, wasn't it?" she accused, her voice full of tension and confusion. "You've been out to get me from the start." I stood my ground and met her gaze. "I gave you an opportunity, Mary," I said evenly. "The outcome was in your hands, not mine." Mary looked frustrated, her anger barely contained. I understood that she was upset, but her accusation wasn't fair. She had been given every chance to succeed, and the decisions she made were her own. I wasn't here to sabotage her. I was here to make sure the job was done right. She paused for a moment, her face softening as the reality of the situation sank in. "I didn't mean for things to go this way," she muttered, her voice quieter now. "I know," I replied, "but this is about more than just one project. It's about learning from mistakes and improving. We can't afford to let this happen again." Mary nodded, finally understanding the gravity of the situation. She had to take responsibility for her actions, and I hoped this would be a turning point for her. This wasn't about tearing her down. It was about making sure she grew from the experience. We all had to be accountable, and I knew that if she took this lesson to heart, she could turn things around. I stayed calm and measured, even as Mary's tone grew more emotional. "But you just watched me fail," she said, her voice shaking with desperation. "You could have helped more. You could have guided me." "Helping is one thing," I replied, "but doing your job for you is another. We all have to meet the company's standards. Unfortunately, your work didn't meet those expectations." She scoffed, throwing her hands up in frustration. "So that's it. You're just going to watch me go down." "It's not about watching you fail, Mary. I document everyone's performance. It's my job, and it's not personal," I said, trying to stay firm yet professional. Later that afternoon, Mr. David called both of us into his office. The tension in the air was thick as Mary, and I sat across from him. He laid out the papers I had prepared: mismanaged budgets, unvetted vendors, and timeline issues. After reviewing the evidence and considering Rachel's observations, he said, "We've decided it's best for the company that we part ways with you, Mary." Strongly, Mr. David said. As the decision's reality sunk in, Mary's face became pale and the blaze in her eyes subsided. "I comprehend," she said, her voice almost discernible. The word of Mary's dismissal got around fast. There was something off about the vibe during the next family get-together. I was making myself a coffee when my brother James came over. I am aware of the difficulties. "Jules, are you okay?" he said, clearly showing worry. "I fulfilled my obligation, James. It was about honesty, not retaliation," I remarked, understanding the gravity of the issue. He offered me a comforting touch on the shoulder and nodded. "I know, sis, and I believe that everyone else knows it as well, deep down." Our parents, who are always encouraging, kept quiet about Mary's disappearance. Rather than concentrating on splitting up the family, they tried to lighten the mood of the evening. The tension that had been present earlier gradually subsided as the laughter and talk continued. Afterwards, I had some time to think as I drove home to the sound of my old automobile. As the streetlights flickered by, I pondered about all that had transpired. Making difficult decisions for my work affected not just myself, but also everyone around me. I understood it was my responsibility to maintain professional standards, even if I hadn't intended to harm Mary directly. That required making tough choices, even when they affected relatives. Even though those decisions seemed like a lot, I continued driving because I knew that I had performed my duties honestly and fairly. With the most important values guiding me, the path ahead seemed more apparent. That concludes our tale. How do you feel? Was Rachel correct in the way she resolved Mary's situation? Did she make the correct decision by adhering to her professional responsibilities, or should she have offered greater encouragement? Please share your opinions in the comments section below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to our posts for more like it.